Watch this.
What happened on 13?
No, we're not going to go.
No, I've actually forgotten.
I tried to hit a little sort of pokey 5-iron down, didn't I? And
Yeah, I remember.
12.
No. It might
12.
might have even been 14.
12.
No, it was I thought it was 13. But
12.
Anyway, maybe it wasn't. 12.
It was 12.
When's the halfway house? After 12th green?
After the 11th green.
12,
I gave
13.
you a cheapo.
14.
win.
Are you talking about the one you hit off the tee?
Yeah, hit the 5-iron fan right. It's not why we're here. It's not what we're on this podcast for. Either way, all I know is Gary Wolstenholme will not be in the car on the way back. Ringing Dean Robertson saying, you've got to go and check this guy Sam out from Cookie Jar. Yeah. He's the real deal.
After all the talk, Sam, of being the only 4 handicapper that could play Walker Cup at a day's notice, Gary, as a man who's played 6 Walker Cups, the all-time point scorer in the Walker Cup, could Sam play Walker Cup tomorrow?
Probably not tomorrow.
But maybe a few months' time.
I think with work, it's possible. But the dedication would have to be... I mean, his son's birthday this weekend would have to have gone out the window.
That's what I've tried to say at home, but we digress. We've had a great day. We should say we're in Ganton Clubhouse.
Yeah.
And when we kicked this idea around of getting together a few weeks ago, I said, where would you like to go? What should we do? And you said Ganton's a pretty special place for me.
Yeah, it's special for lots of different reasons. I've had a lot of success here. Obviously, Walker Cup, the Amateur Championship, the British Mid-Amateur and Home Internationals. They've all been special events for me where I've been successful. So it seemed to make logical choice to, if we were going to meet, why not meet somewhere where there's a lot of historical background as far as I'm concerned. And the fact that, in particular, the Amateur Championship, when I won here in 91, if you like, stimulated my career to the extent where all of a sudden I became, a regular as far as England was concerned, and also for Great Britain and Ireland as well. So I look at this place as fitting my game particularly well. Yeah. I was obviously one of the leading players for England at that stage anyway. I've been playing for England since '88. I felt as though this was going to be a good venue for me. And luckily, in 1991, it turned out to be exactly that. Qualified comfortably. Felt as though I was on top of my game. The course suited me very well. There was a lot of run on the ball because I wasn't the longest player. And there's some significant holes out there as we experienced today. But it was a lot warmer. The course was in superlative condition and the greens were incredibly fast.
Fiery. When this gets fiery here, it is a force to be reckoned with. I mean, it was an amazing condition today.
I mean, short game, you
but
have to have...
burnt off, this would be terrifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying because the size of the bunkers becomes...
And nothing changes. It's the test is... it changes on a day-to-day basis, which is why it makes it such an entertaining course to play.
There's a lot to unpack in this podcast, so we're going to have to be sparing with our questions. But before we kind of get into all the amateur victories and your record, I'm really curious. We talked about it last night, but your relationship with golf and how you came to play golf. Your dad played in the Open Championship. He was a top flight player himself. How did your childhood growing up around golf? How did you get introduced to the game?
Well, obviously with my father having been a successful amateur, and he played for England 50 times, played 2 Walker Cups, won the English Amateur twice, won the Brabazon. From that point of view, he was one of the top players of his day, and then had a 5th place finish, I think, in the Open Championship. And the following year, in '60, he turned professional, age 30. You know, I looked up to him and his accolades, etc. Particularly later on in life, when I appreciated more what he'd achieved. But he turned professional, became playing assistant at St George's Hill, and I think a lot of people thought that he had a huge career potentially, and so. When he decided with a very good friend of his, Peter Thompson, who was obviously the 5-time Open champion. Unbelievable player. And they got on really, really well. Peter Thompson wasn't the easiest person to get on with, but my father and he got on like house on fire. And so they decided that Australia was the next sort of big place. And so my father decided he was going to move out to Australia. The only problem with Australia as far as world golf's concerned is that the time difference as far as TV's concerned, it always put a kibosh on it as far as American audience, and that was the big money basis for World Tour golf. Anyway, him having decided he was going to move to Australia, my mum didn't want to go to Australia, basically. It was the other side of the world. She was very family orientated, so... Tragically, they decided to get divorced, and so I moved in with my grandparents up in Grange over Sands with my mum, and that's where I started playing golf. My grandma was a member at Grange Fell Golf Club, which is a little 9-hole golf course with spectacular views, and she used to take me out on the golf course there. So I went out with her. My grandfather had been a very good player. He'd been a sort of a 2-handicapper, played in things like the English Amateur. And, there was a lot of encouragement for me to play golf just as a young lad, to enjoy it as much as anything else. I had my first lesson with a pro called Fred Robinson, who was a sort of a club pro for 2 or 3 clubs in the area, and I had a few lessons with him. He dropped a few balls in front of the first tee, and we played down the first hole, and I had a little cut down 7-iron, a little cut down 5-wood and a putter, and that's how I started. And I obviously had a talent for the game. My mum was a very good ball sports player, but it was just a hobby. I went to prep school at Charnley Hall, which was a little prep school in Grange over Sands. My mum worked as the matron there, and no chance of golf at all. I played sports. Yes, I loved sports, all sports really. And in the holidays, I would go out with my grandma, and we'd go and play a few holes of golf, and it wasn't really until much later on in life that I was able to play a little bit more than I was doing. I wish that I'd had the opportunity that young people have these days with PGA initiatives and things like that, to give me an opportunity to have realised my potential much earlier, because through being at boarding school, there wasn't really an opportunity. I did play at Giggleswick up in Yorkshire. They had a little 9-hole golf course, but it wasn't on a regular basis. You got the opportunity to play in the summer term pretty much. But I was playing cricket. I was playing, obviously, rugby. It's a rugby school. And so, you didn't really get the opportunity to play golf. And then in the summer months, in the holidays, I would go out and play golf. But I wouldn't be playing every day. It wasn't an opportunity to be able to do. So it wasn't really until I was 23 handicap at 18.
Yeah, so you're never great as a kid.
So this bit, we talked about this last night, which is absolutely incredible. It's like the fact that you can be as decorated as you are now, and at 18 be a 23 handicap is, in nowadays,
unfathomable.
It's unheard of. It's absolutely unheard of.
Well, I had the talent. I was lucky enough. My father came over and played on the European Tour and took me as a caddy, age 16, 17, 18, for 6 weeks. And it's amazing what you can learn, because he was playing with some of the very, very best players in the world at that time that were playing on the European tour. And I got the opportunity to travel with him, watch how he practiced, how he played, what his tactics were with regards playing the game. And so I was like a little sponge. I sort of soaked it all up. And although I hadn't played, I might maybe have got 1 or 2 games in that 6 weeks. By the time I came back, I was that much better a player again.
Really?
And so, when I look back on it now, that gave me a formative experience of being able to have an ability to play the game so much better than I was actually handicap-wise. I mean, I was probably the world's greatest 23 handicapper.
I can assure you were.
I think if you're off 23, that's definitely.
But it was not through. I didn't get the chance to play medals. It was as simple as that. It wasn't really until I joined Silverdale Golf Club up in the Lake District, or South Lakeland area, that I started to play medals. And my mum used to drive me up to the golf club, and I'd go out and I'd play as many competitions as I could during the holidays.
How much of an influence on your golf career was your father?
In realistic terms, it was more to do with his reputation, I suppose. He didn't really want me to play golf to start with. He realised how hard the game was going to be as far as making a living. He wanted me to get a proper lifestyle. Dentist, doctor, solicitor, whatever. Anything other than being a golfer. And it's a shame in some respects that was the case, because knowing what I know now about me as a person, and of course, who's to say when you learn these things, but had I been given that opportunity, I think I would have been a very successful professional from much earlier. But as soon as you get past sort of 16, it's quite hard to change your body blueprint, as I call it. And it wasn't really until I moved down to Leicester that I started to play much more. I mean, yes, I halved my handicap every year for a couple of years. And then, all of a sudden I was given a 5 handicap. I had to do 3 cards at Kirby Muxloe Golf Club to get my initial handicap, because they didn't accept that my handicap was, they had to make sure it was what it was. Now, at that stage, I was probably about 11 handicap. They gave me an 8 after 3 cards that I put in. And then my first competition was the club championship, and I shot 72-80, obviously not winning, and they gave me a 5.
It doesn't scream 6 Walker Cups yet, does it?
Not yet.
No, it definitely didn't. But I loved it, and the opportunity was that I used to get the bus over to the club, and I would practice, and I would be getting 2 buses to get home in the evening, and I wouldn't get home till 11:15 at night, having gone out and practiced and played. And I loved it. And the opportunities that it gave me, I played in the medals and did well. And then a very good friend of mine, Eddie Hammond, who was a leading light in Leicestershire and the Midlands with the golf, wanted to give me an opportunity. So he said to the county, we need to give this guy a chance and get me into the county second team, which is what happened. I had no money. One interesting story, when I got into the first team, we went to play Suffolk at Purdis Heath, wonderful golf course. And we'd driven over on the Saturday morning for a practice in the afternoon, and Gilbert Schooler, one of the players for Leicestershire, said, right, 5 are in, winner takes all. And there was 8 of us, so out we go. I'd only got £1.75 in my pocket.
It's like the Lee Trevino thing, isn't it?
Well, it sort of was.
Yeah, like you don't know pressure.
And I'm not kidding. I sweated over every single shot. Shot 66, took the money, and I'd never been so wealthy at that stage.
Rolling in it.
Well, for me, if I'd only got £1.75 in my pocket, that was, it was big money for me to have a 5 off everyone else.
like Titanic Thompson stuff.
Well, sort of, yeah. Yes, I had to buy everyone a drink, but of course, that was the least of my worries.
Yeah.
I quadrupled my money, on that one particular round. I didn't do particularly well in the competition, the county match itself, but by that stage, I didn't really care. But Leicestershire was pretty competitive. We had a decent camaraderie, and it was giving me an opportunity to compete against other people in head-to-head match play. I then joined the Leicestershire Golf Club, which was a mile and a half up the road, and I used to walk up with my clubs every day to go and practice and give myself the opportunities. And of course, then I was playing for Leicestershire. First team. I then lost in the final. It was the first time that I'd sort of done really well in a big competition, Leicestershire match play. Lost to a guy called Alan Martinez, who was the leading light at that time and really should have won. I lost one down, having been one up with 3 to play, which was gutting. But it showed that I had the potential, and it gave me a lot of confidence. I then won the Midland Open, amateur Open, which was at Little Aston and Sutton Coldfield, and I won it in the playoff. And that sort of then gave me the opportunity to represent the Midlands. All of a sudden, people were starting to take notice because the name was already synonymous with golf. So,
of course, yeah.
In some respects, I probably had to overly prove myself, but my game was not really strong. It was based around hitting fairways, hitting greens, wonderful short game, and I had an electric short game, and I hit everything pretty straight. But I wasn't a long hitter.
Not hearing bad things, yeah.
But I then won the West of England, which was at Saunton, and my father had won the PGA at Saunton in 1966, I think it was. So there was, again, a nice synergy there as far as name and success. And I stayed with a guy called John Goodban, who was the leading light in the Southwest. And again, it gave me a notoriety because all of a sudden I was winning 72-hole stroke plays with decent scores.
And you're on the radar then.
Then I'm on the radar.
England selectors are going to start looking at you and
absolutely
stuff.
And I was doing well in other
all
things.
This is going on?
I did virtually everything other than be a fireman or a policeman. I mean, I worked in a camping and leisure shop. I worked in a sports shop. And basically it was just during the winter.
Yeah.
And then I played golf in the summer.
Because that's not an easy making ends meet, just picking up jobs to then fund the golf
I had no
career.
money. I had no money. Mum made every effort to help me in any way she possibly could. She used to lend me her car to be able to get to tournaments and stuff like this. So I was incredibly fortunate that she was so supportive and helped me in any way she possibly could. And that lasted for a long period of time. Although I wasn't living at home, I lived in Bristol for a decent amount of time, 7 years, and she lived in Monmouth. So she would drive over once a week, pick up my washing, and then do it for me so that I didn't have to do it.
When you're living this life where you're trying to make ends meet, you're playing golf, you're starting to achieve, how obviously your father saying he doesn't want you to turn professional. How hard was it to resist the urge to be like, I'm playing quite good golf, I'm beating really good players, perhaps I just turn my hand to being a professional?
You mentioned that last night. I sense that really stuck with you, this notion of my father never wanted me to be a pro.
It did, but I was never the homegrown boy come good. I was always beating the homegrown boy come good, whether it was in Leicester or whether it was in Bristol. So the local businessmen that would perhaps come up with a bit of sponsorship for you to potentially turn professional was never a realistic opportunity for me. And because of that, I looked at it and I was enjoying what I was doing. It gave me an identity. It gave me an opportunity to be able to be somebody and not just a faceless individual, that didn't really have the opportunity to be able to excel in anything else. and golf was obviously the one thing that I was doing. I played field hockey. I was a decent field hockey player. But in realistic terms, golf was going to give me my opportunity. And I gave up field hockey when I was 23 because in the winter months it kept me fit. There wasn't much golf. But then as soon as I won the amateur championship in 91 round Ganton, it gave me an even greater opportunity to be able to then go away and compete, represent England, basically all over the world, and also Great Britain and Ireland with, I played the St Andrews Trophy in 92, and that was the first time I'd represented Great Britain and Ireland. And the extraordinary thing was that having got into a 9-man team to represent Great Britain and Ireland in the St Andrews Trophy against the continent of Europe, and then in a year later, I wasn't good enough to be in a 10-man team, allegedly, to play in the Walker Cup, which was the oddest decision. But in some respects, it galvanises you to then work that much harder to prove yourself.
Just rewinding on that just a little bit, what was the road like to Ganton? Your first amateur victory. What was it like, prepping to come here? We're sat in the gorgeous clubhouse that I've got right now, overlooking the 18th green. And tell us a little bit about that amateur victory.
I was lucky enough that I stayed with a family who were members here. So Andrew Moore was a friend of mine. He was a member at the Leicestershire Golf Club, and I stayed with his family, and Sharon, his sister, and then Peter caddied for me. His father caddied for me in the tournament. And that was a nice way. I didn't have to stay in a hotel. It didn't cost me anything. So I was very, very fortunate to be able to have that relaxation off course. I'd been to Scarborough when I was a little lad. I think we came here 6 years running for our family holiday. So my uncle and his family and mum and myself came over and we stayed at Scarborough for our summer holiday for a couple of weeks. And I loved Scarborough. It's just the most wonderful seaside town with the best beach, and you've got the harbour with the fairgrounds and the slotties, and there was the shows that were on as well. P-Zone Park, I'll never forget. There was always the Battle of P-Zone Park, and they had the model jets and the planes coming in and the boats on the lake. Absolutely. And the castle as well. I loved all that. So when I came here, I always felt sort of pretty relaxed. And the fact that I was able to stay with a family, and Peter knew the course inside out. He's a stoical Yorkshireman, and was a good guy to have on the bag, basically.
Yeah.
And that helped hugely. I qualified, as I say, comfortably enough. Charlie Banks, who was a Notts player who I knew very well, he was on the peripheral of whether we were going to qualify. So we decided we weren't going to sit and just board watch, which is horribly nail biting. We decided we were going to go into Scarborough and get candy floss, sit on the beach, do anything other than watch the scoreboard as it was ticking over. And I think Charlie did qualify that year, as obviously I did too.
So you qualified here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's over 2 rounds. It was 2 rounds at Scarborough Northcliffe, which they very kindly made me an honorary member, just because I said how much I enjoyed Scarborough Northcliffe. It is a lovely golf course. It's inland, though.
Never heard of it.
It's just on the top side of Scarborough. Has great views overlooking the bay. And obviously here as well. So it was just a perfect opportunity for me to be able to get 2 scores together, which I was playing a lot of golf, and because my short game was so good, you didn't need to be a local expert necessarily to be able to get the ball round the golf course. But as I said before, we'd had the great summer. The ball was running. It suited me very well because I wasn't the longest, and in fact, that's an understatement. I was probably one of the shortest. But I kept my game in a situation where I was able to, if I missed greens, I was still getting up and down, and I was hard to beat. And very often, people, and this is probably true of my entire career, people would think they got me, and then realised, oh no, they haven't. And oh dear, maybe I'm the one that's maybe going to lose this hole. And that happened. And they're lucky with the draw. The 64 players that made it through, the majority of the US Walker Cup players from the week before at Porthcawl were in the top half of the draw, and I was in the bottom half. And the guys that I had to beat, there was an Italian, a Scot, et cetera, et cetera. But as soon as I got to the semi-finals, I started to feel as though this was perhaps going to be a great opportunity to really step forward out of the lime into the limelight and give myself opportunities which I may never have had previously. I played for England, and although I'd done pretty well, there wasn't a certainty as to how long I was going to play for England or whatever. You have to keep getting results, particularly for me not being one of the longest. So, when I got to the semi-finals, and that was the same for Wilson Bryson, who was the guy I had to play in the semi, good Scots player. And, I still felt I had a good opportunity, having played in home internationals, that I thought, well, I had a chance of getting through to the final. And, of course, I think it was 2 Americans that had to play in the other semi. So fortunately, we've avoided, the dreaded US Walker Cup players, because at that stage it was starting to become a scenario of the Walkover Cup, because
really?
that was what it was being dubbed. By the time we got to Royal Porthcawl in '95, that's what they were dubbing it, and there was a call for Europe to play the US in the Walker Cup. And unfortunately, the Americans said, no, this is a Great Britain and Ireland against the United States tournament.
And it's held on to that.
Unfortunately.
Just before I'm going to dive into to that 95 Walker Cup, because it's absolutely fascinating. But just before we do, when you were playing the final of the AM here, how aware were you of all the spoils that comes with that victory?
I didn't really think about it, to be honest. I'm very much a man in the moment. I focus on what I'm dealing with right now. I don't worry about what might happen, and I certainly wasn't going to worry about what has already happened. The fact that I was delighted to have got to the final anyway, I was sort of in a no-lose situation. I was the last Brit, which obviously gives me a big advantage going forwards. But I didn't really think about, well, what happens if you win? That actually, funnily enough, only happened when I did win. But I knew I was playing well enough to be able to do it. The cards were starting to fall along the lines of, actually, you could, go on and you're going to give this guy a really good run for his money. Now, as it turned out, I didn't start terribly well in the tournament. But in actual fact, I went 2 down early, and I was trailing a couple of officials, R&A officials, and I heard one say to the other, well, that's that then.
Because they into a 36
but we're sort of just getting started, and I looked at it and I was going, I haven't lost this yet. I was thinking to myself, I haven't lost this yet. It actually annoyed me. Maybe that was a good thing, I don't know. But by the time we got to the 18th, and I made a birdie, from about 15 feet to go in 2 up, I think it was. I then knew that I had the opportunity to go and do something very special, but I still had the job to do. Now, as it turned out, from the 9th in the morning to the 9th in the afternoon, I'd shot 66 with a double bogey.
Wow.
which was almost impossible to beat.
That's hard to play against, isn't it?
Well,
Because
the
only shots you've dropped have come on one hole, so
yeah,
it's
exactly.
really a 65 in match play.
Well, even better than that to a certain extent. But, I think Bob May had obviously played the Walker Cup the week before, so that was pretty tiring. I think he'd run out of juice by that stage, especially against an opponent that was giving him absolutely nothing. But I did just everything right, and it was not until literally I'd won 8 and 6, and I was getting the buggy back to the clubhouse, that I started to all of a sudden realise what I'd achieved and going to Augusta.
It's not
up a
bad
new
for
level,
10 years earlier. You're 23 handicap.
Well, and that's the craziness of it, that it's almost fate that you look back and you go, well, what could have happened had I been given an opportunity much earlier? But it's a sliding doors moment. What happens if? There's no point worrying about that. But I was actually laughing to myself as I got driven back to the clubhouse that I was actually going to get the opportunity to go to Augusta National and play in the Masters, and obviously the Open Championship as well. So I had some time to think about it, and of course you come to December and I get the invitation from Augusta National, cordially inviting me to attend the Masters in 1992.
Tell us about that experience. Come on.
Well, it was funny because I was living in Bristol at that stage. I was sharing a house with a good friend of mine who was I was a member at Bristol and Clifton. He was a member at Hembury. Hembury was just up the road. So I got the opportunity to go and play at Hembury whenever I wanted to as well. But I was practicing in the kitchen on the linoleum in preparation for
Solid.
putting on those greens.
You might have built it up in your head at that point.
Well, but let me tell you, I honestly felt that it gave me a big advantage, because if you're putting on such a fast surface, there's no way that you can put a poor stroke and still achieve what you're trying to achieve. So I put targets, like a tea peg or a small water bottle at the end of the kitchen. Now I'm talking about a 20-foot putt. To hit that small target on a surface as quick as that, soon accentuates any issues that you might have had.
How was the kitchen floor? Was it pretty pure, or did you have some break?
No, it was pretty pure.
Okay.
So it wasn't as if it was going to bounce off or anything, or have a huge break. But that's how I prepared. I know it sounds silly, but it was a sort of a self-made way of getting to practice on greens that were going to be that quick. And fortunately, there was a guy at the golf club who was involved with travel and that sort of thing, and he got me a upgrade business class seat with the Delta airline into Atlanta, and then gave me an opportunity to play some golf in Atlanta itself prior to going to the Masters. And I turned up on the Saturday morning at Augusta. These days you can go at any stage during the year prior. Once you know you qualified, you could go and practice on the golf course. But in my day, I couldn't have afforded to go. But this was an opportunity. I'd never been to America before. Yes, I'd traveled, but never business class. So I had an absolute ball. Some of the experiences that I was given were certainly well beyond the bounds of what I would have ever experienced before. So of course, turning up at Augusta National and going down Washington Road and then turning into Magnolia Lane and going down to the clubhouse where I think we drove at like 2 miles an hour, and the practice ground's on the right hand side in those days. And it's a tunnel basically down to what you can see is the roundabout with the Augusta logo in flowers, and then the colonial white clubhouse, which is absolutely pristine. It must have 50 coats of white paint on it. I mean, it is absolutely bright white. Everything is completely and utterly immaculate. And my caddy, who was my boss at the time, a guy called David Powell, he had a solicitor's practice called Ulster Solicitors on College Green in Bristol. And he said, well, I'll let you go and play only if I'm allowed to caddy for you.
It's a great deal, though.
It's a
It's
great-
actually a
Can
really
I tell you,
good deal.
it didn't even take me 2 seconds.
He was a player, though. You said
Yeah, he
a player.
was. He played for Gloucestershire.
He was a good player.
He was a plus handicap player.
But they've always been very good at Augusta, I sense, with taking the amateur winners and pairing them with some of the greats or past champions and people like that. So did you get a bit of that experience with practice rounds and some of the early games?
Again, we're going back to having got the invitation. I then got a letter from Jack Nicklaus saying, would I like to have a practice round with him on the Wednesday?
No way.
What?
So that was pretty special in itself. But going back to when I first got to Augusta National, you get given a car. And in those days, it was a Cadillac. And I got a Cadillac Eldorado with red leather seats, red leather interior, electric everything. Now, I got an Astra at the time, a little blue Astra, which was about 5 or 6 years old. And let me tell you, as soon as I absolutely... But they actually auctioned the cars after the tournament, and I could have picked up this car for anything between 12 and 15,000 US dollars. And I just wish I would have loved to have had the money to have that car. It was spectacular to drive.
Was it a fast car?
Oh yes, it was. Well, you know this because it was a 3-litre petrol engine car, and I picked it up, and so I was pretty chuffed with myself with the car, and I got the radio on, and I drove back down out onto Washington Road. And I turned off towards Martinez, which is where I was staying at the time. And I decided to put my foot down. Big mistake. Within 2 minutes, the blue and red lights were flashing behind me and pulled me over. So I got stopped for speeding within literally 15 minutes of picking the car up. And obviously, you've got a Augusta logo on the back. I think he thought I might have stolen it. But anyway, fortunately, I think he realised I was one of the players because I had the player's badge on and everything. And I made the mistake of getting out of the car. Then I made the mistake of putting my hands in my pockets. And anyway, fortunately, he very kindly let me off. But when I got back to my accommodation, having then driven at 30, 40 miles an hour for the remainder of the journey, I told them, they said, oh, how was your day? And I said, well, I got stopped for speeding. You got stopped for speeding? And they haven't arrested you? And apparently in that particular area, if you get stopped for speeding, you're in jail for the evening.
That would have been a good story.
That would have been a great story, yes, but not for me.
Scotty before Scotty.
So, yeah, it was just one of those experiences on that first day. And then going back to people he played with, obviously I got the chance to play with Jack, and then I played the Par 3 tournament. But they'd done the draw for the first round, and it was 2-ball in those days with a redraw after each round. And the draw came out, and I was drawn with one Arnold Palmer. And at the time, I know this sounds really ludicrous, and obviously I regret the thought even crossing my mind now, but I sort of was a bit disappointed. I wanted one of the sort of the superstar guys.
Because Arnie would have been a few years old.
He was 63 at that time, but he was a past winner, and that's what the amateur championship winner gets. He gets a past winner, whereas the US amateur champion gets to play defending champion. So I've been given a 10:30 tee time, and I'm playing with Arnold Palmer. Anyway, by the time I got round to Thursday morning, having done all the other stuff, we had the international players dinner, which is defunct now, where all the international players turned up bar, I think 2. And then we then had the amateur dinner, where we were guest of honour, myself and Mitch Voges, who was the US amateur champion. That was just the most surreal experience of the luminaries of the game, like Sir Michael Bonalic were there, and other, sort of top, sort of influential people within the amateur game were all there, and other invitees. And so I sat next to Alistair Cook, who was an incredible individual.
Broadcaster.
He was a broadcaster.
Letters from America, or whatever it
all
used to be.
that. And he was one of the most fascinating people I've ever met in my life. I had the most wonderful evening talking to him about all sorts of things. So anyway, we did the amateur dinner. I played the practice round with Jack. Jack played fantastic, even though he wasn't 100% fit. And sadly, we lost. So I had to give a check. Or I gave it was I can't remember, $100. He writes a check out to Manny Zerman, and I'm thinking, you actually haven't lost any money here, because no one cashed the check.
Yeah,
they keep it and put it up on the wall. Very clever,
shrewd,
very clever.
I've got an uncashed
So
check.
anyway, I lost $100, which that's just the way it works. But and then I played
your check.
No,
your check was cashed.
yeah, my freight could have been. Yeah. But I then played the par 3 tournament. Absolutely loved that as well. What an experience that is. I did.
Was it as convivial as it is?
Oh, it's absolutely amazing. Yeah. The crowds get very close to the greens, by the way. It is quite intimidating.
Yeah.
Really?
If you have any sort of thought of a shank or a push or anything else, let me tell you, you're hitting somebody without any doubt. They have 30,000 people around those holes. It's unbelievable. The atmosphere is just electric. And obviously they have nearest to pin wins a prize. And if you make a hole in one, you obviously get crystal and all that sort of stuff. So then come the day, and I'm on the practice ground, and I've just started my practice regime, and I feel a presence. So I look round, and Sevi Ballesteros is standing right behind me, and he's going, "You're going to do well this week," and walks off. Well, I'm now feeling about 50 foot tall. Yeah. I'm thinking, this is great. Sevi, my absolute hero, has come in and said, "I'm going to do well." Now, and as an aside to this, I got a box of metal woods arrive on that morning.
Who do they come from?
Gear for golf, I think they were called. It was something like that.
Were they just
anyway.
sort of peppering them around? Is that...
No, it was just somebody I met, and they said, "We'd like to send you, some metal woods." Our latest.
Told us this last night. This is madness.
So anyway,
I've
got the box, and the caddy's got the box. David's got the box under his arm, and so anyway, we go down to the practice ground, and I said, "Just open up that box. I just want to, see how they feel." Anyway, I started hitting these new metal woods, and I had probably 2 or 3, 4 shots with each one. And I got this little baby draw going. And I thought, hey, these are quite good. I said, right, we're putting these in the bag. My caddy,
how many,
David, nearly died.
How many did you hit with them?
Probably about 4 or 5 shots each.
That is absolutely mental. I can't.
Because literally
this is Thursday of the Masters.
Within 2 hours, I'm teeing off.
And this is early metal woods as well. So what were you playing with before? What was your set going over there? Was it persimmon or was it?
It was some laminates.
Yeah, and then you've got hold of these metal things. Oh, these a bit shiny. I've got
a little baby draw going.
I'm playing with Nicholas. I'm playing
heads.
with Arnie. Like, why not just mix it up and throw some new?
So anyway, I got the
back.
baby draw going, and that's what you needed. So anyway. I've said, right, my caddy has gone apoplectic. He said, you cannot use these today. So I've said, no, look, come on, let's give it a go.
He is your boss, though, isn't he?
Yeah, well, he is my boss. But anyway, no, I said, no, I'm going to put them in the bag. So, right, so my other woods go out the bag into the locker. And so I go down to the putting green. And after about sort of 40 minutes of practicing all the various putts that I'm likely to get, and I was putting fantastically. I mean, fantastically. And so anyway, we get to a stage where I'm thinking, actually, I can't really do a lot more. I'll go down on the first tee and watch the group in front and soak in the atmosphere and get a feel for it. And Peter Alice, who was my godfather, gave me some wonderful advice. He said, look, what you've got to do is you've got to try and slow everything down. Get it down to as slow as you feel as though it's still reasonable. Because you're going to be very nervous, and I guarantee you'll be over in a flash, your opening tee shot. And obviously the opening tee shot is pretty intimidating anyway. So I go down to the tee, and I sort of have to force my way through onto the first tee. And people are looking at me, what are you doing, And no, I'm actually playing in the next group. So, all right, okay. So I then get on to the tee, and I go up to the starter, who's a lovely old chap. And I said, is it all right if I just stand at the back of the tee? Oh, yes, no problem, sir. You just stand over here and completely understand. Now, if somebody had said to me who was in the group in front teed off, I wouldn't, even if they said I'd give you £1 million, I can't remember who it was. I was just taking it all in. There were about, 2,000 people around the first tee. Great atmosphere, fantastic atmosphere. So anyway, they tee off, walk off. And I've got the best seat in the house. It's just perfect. I'm at the back of the first tee, no problem at all. Anyway, the crowds start to build up. And I'm thinking, this is quite interesting. And I reckon that the whole way round, we had about 1,200 people that followed just our game. So anyway, you hear the hubbub and it builds up, crescendo. Arnold Palmer bursts through the crowd, arm up here, huge applause, woo, all that sort of stuff. And so he comes up and the starter goes and introduces himself, shakes his hand. And he said, Mr. Palmer, I've waited all my life to be able to do this. And Palmer turns to me and goes, well, I'm glad we both made it then. Because the guy was probably about 80, which is a lovely expression. So the starter then says, this is Mr. Wolstenholme, he's your playing partner today. And Arnold shakes me by. He's got big paw of a hand, very strong man. And shakes my hand. He said, I knew your father really well. I'm really looking forward to playing with you. I hope you play well.
What a nice thing to say on the first tee.
But really nice guy.
Nice
just
thing
classy.
A seriously classy guy.
Anything's going to just put you at ease. He couldn't have said anything else.
Absolutely right.
There.
And so I was incredibly fortunate to, I feel, play with him. So anyway, we get 4 pleas on the tee, Arnold Palmer. And age 63 with a steel shafted persimmon-headed driver, hits it 295 yards straight down the middle.
Bang.
Boom. Crowd go bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. The atmosphere was, you could barely hear anything was going on. So it starts to die down. I think, oh, crikey, it's my turn now. So I go across to my caddy, and he's got my brand new metalwood driver out. And he hands it to me, and it was a ha moment, but he said, for God's sake, don't miss it.
So
and up until that absolute moment, I had never even contemplated missing it. So, of course, the adrenaline's flowing. And as I say, this would only be about the 6th shot that I've actually hit with this club. But I stand there and I absolutely nail it. I try and think about keeping it as slow as possible, but I've nailed it down the middle. About 270 yards straight down the middle, 265 maybe. Leave myself a 7-iron into the green. Well, I'm not kidding. I've got so much adrenaline running that I ran off I literally ran down the first tee. It was like as though it was the fight or flight, fight or flight scenario. Well, very nearly, yeah. Boo Weekly. I could have been doing that, yeah, absolutely. But anyway, I then had to check myself. Literally, physically, had to check myself to say you can't leave Mr. Palmer and all my entourage in my wake. But as I said, we had about 1,200 people following just our match. So wherever we were, whatever the gallery was at that particular position, it was swelled by these extra people that were following our match, because of obviously Mr. Palmer, not me. But it certainly, I'm a bit of a showman at the best of times. So subsequently, I love having people coming out to watch.
Yeah.
But I played a 7-iron onto the green to about 20 feet below the flag. I was a bit disappointed it didn't go a bit closer, but I thought uphill putt, no problem at all. Give myself a chance for a 3. Mr. Palmer plays his 9-iron just past the flag, probably, 12 feet above the flag. And I hit this putt, and I'm putting fantastically well. Hit this putt, and I'm thinking, it's just going to miss on the left. And I start to walk up, and the ball just keeps going. Mm. And all of a sudden, I've now got a 6.5 footer coming back. And I'm thinking, I can't believe this. I don't find out until afterwards that the greenkeepers triple freaky the first green alone.
Really?
Now, what they do this is a defense of the golf course. They try and put people off. You lose your sense of speed. What you've been practicing on the putting green is not relative to that first green.
Interesting.
But from then on, it's the regular speed, which was around 12.5, 13.
I'm interested in things.
But anyway, to finish that off, I missed the putt. Mr. Palmer 3 putts. We both stalk off to the first, to the second tee rather, and fortunately it's a par 5, so we have to wait for the group in front because they're all waiting for the green to have a go at it. And I'm stood at the back of the tee, and I'm thinking, oh, please don't let me shoot 90. Mr. Palmer's standing, it's like a tableau. Mr. Palmer's standing towards the front of the tee thinking, why the hell do they always give me an amateur? My caddy is thinking I could be making a lot more money and far more enjoyable back at home. And, there's this tableau of all like, because no one's talking to each other because we're both thinking, well, how's the rest of the day going to go? Anyway, fortunately for me, I play 2 decent shots, lay up nicely. Third shot nearly goes in, screws back 6 feet, hole the putt for a 3. Next hole, hit a pitching wedge third shot onto the green to 12 feet, hole the putt for a 3. So I'm now back under par again. Make great par on 4, great par on 5, make a great par on 6. 7, I knock it to about 12.5, 15 feet, something like that, hole the putt. So I'm now 2 under. I then come on to the 8th hole and I play a world-class chip from about probably, 70 or 80 yards short of the front edge. Make another birdie. I'm now 3 under. And then we come down 9 and I've pulled my tee shot a little bit and I've got to play a 4-iron in. Now, let me tell you, when you're watching this, they're all hitting wedges, 9-irons, no more than that. I'm hitting a 4-iron into this. I've played a world-class shot. It's carried the bunker just, but it's run through to the back of the green. Now, where you hear the expression down a marble staircase, let me tell you, when you're through the back of that green, it is insanely fast. The pin was in the middle tier. Anyway, I've played just the best chip in the world. And as I'm walking down to about, 3.5 feet, Mr. Palmer walks past. He goes, wow. He said, that was a great shot. Because he appreciated every bit of what I was doing as well as he was. And I stood over the putt and I thought, oh, please don't miss it. Please don't miss it. Anyway, fortunately, it goes in. And the big crowds are applauding and everything else. Some wag in the crowd, who obviously was a Brit, shouts, don't look at the leaderboard. And I have a photograph of the guy in the leaderboard leaning out like this. And you could almost have the bubble caption of, who the hell is this guy? I was leading the US Masters at 3 under par.
No way.
Through 9 holes. Unbelievable.
Through 9 holes. So, again, okay.
Don't look at the leaderboard.
Did I? Well, you're bound to because it's that they're enormous. But the fact that you could have this bubble caption.
What does that do to you? Like, we've got so much to get onto, but obviously, what does that do to you mentally? Does that buoy you, or do you look at it and go, "Oh"?
No, it definitely doesn't. It's exciting. The fact that I've turned up to do well.
Because it's almost like mission.
It is mission impossible
because you haven't. But it's mission accomplished because you haven't embarrassed yourself at that point. It's like there's nothing you can do from that point. You're like, I've definitely not embarrassed myself. So, like, shackles are off.
To a certain extent. I mean, the tee shot I didn't quite get far enough left, so it didn't carry down because I hit driver. But I had to hit 3-iron into that green.
10
to 10. I mean, it's a long hole. It's 500 plus yards long. But I hadn't carried it far enough left to be able to get down the slope. So I was leaving myself a hanging lie with the pin sort of mid front left. And And I'd forgotten on the downslope that the ball was probably likely to go off to the right, which it did. Finished in the bunker, splashed out to, I don't know, 6-7 feet, and lipped out. I thought I'd hold it. I did the walk of death. I actually thought I'd hold it. And I was about to punch, and it just lipped out. I was gutted. So, unfortunately, those holes coming into A-man corner are 10 and 11 are hard, really hard for me. I was hitting 5-wood second shot to 11.
Yeah,
they're
now
two long holes. They're even longer because
great.
it's actually slightly uphill for those that can't carry it.
And then it starts to cascade
and then it goes down, significantly downhill. And you can't just bail out either. But anyway, to cut a long story short, I chipped in at 17 to go back to 1 under par, having lost those shots. But one of the undying memories I have of that round was the 16th. Pin was where it was on the final day, at that sort of back right pin position.
Up on the top shelf there.
Yeah, up on that top shelf. And I've played a 5-iron into that hole, and I'd left it about 18 feet short, but on the correct tier. And Mr. Palmer's hit it, and it's just caught the slope, and it's run back to back left. And we've got a huge gallery. I mean, literally, there must have been, I'm going to guess, 4,000 or 5,000 people round that particular green, because they go up onto the towards the 6th tee to be able to get a decent view. And it's surrounded by people. It's the most amazing electric atmosphere that you'll ever have, because the whole place is surrounded. The whole thing is surrounded by people. So anyway, Mr. Palmer is stood there with his putt. And he hits this putt, and I'm thinking to myself, because obviously I'm looking at it myself, and I'm thinking this is a good pace. It's a good line. Anyway, because the patrons know the holes intimately, because they've been sat there all day watching people putt from all sorts of places, but they know. And you could hear them almost, to start with, murmuring and murmur, but builds up as the climbs over the top of the slope, starts to turn. And I'm thinking, this is going to be really, it goes in. Putter up like this, Palmer charging up the green. Crowd are going absolutely mental, to the extent I've been to some sporting occasions in my life. I could hear not a single sound. It was a crescendo of noise that I could feel through the soles of my feet.
And you're stood there on the green with it.
I have never, to this day, it still gives me goosebumps thinking about it, because I've never experienced anywhere, whether it's at Wembley Stadium, Goodison Park, wherever I've been, I have never experienced sound like that, where I couldn't pick out one particular noise. It was echoing in my ears, and it lasted seemingly for minutes. So anyway, I've then got to putt, right, lip out. I'm not kidding. I thought I'd made mine as well, which would have been fantastic, but anyway, I didn't. And we walked off the green, and this guy in the crowd shouts, "Arnie, you're the man!" And as I've walked past, "And you're the man too," which was great. So we get onto the tee, and my caddy turns to Palmer, who's very deaf. He has 2 hearing aids. And he said, "Arnold," he said, "I'm not surprised you need these hearing aids, because if you get noise like that every time you do what you do, it no wonder you're deaf." And it's true.
Yeah, of course.
The thing that you're most synonymous with in your career would be the Walker Cups. You're still yet to play a Walker Cup at this point. How does an experience like that and being in that environment help you when it gets to like 95, which is your first Walker Cup, Royal Porthcawl?
Yeah, because I'd had but I was playing well that season anyway. But the fact that I had to qualify for that team, and they announced 8 of the 10 players. I wasn't one of the 8.
And that's done by some sort of
It was
ranking
done by the committee at the time.
Okay.
The committee, the chairman's selectors and the selectors had to pick, and they decided to pick 8 with 2 to be announced. And David Howell and Podrick Harrington, they got selected. Gordon Sherry, Barclay Howard, they all got selected. And there was an element of England, Scotland, Isle of Wales wanting their respective representatives on the team, which was never the way to pick a side anyway. If there's 10 Scots, you pick 10 Scots. You want to win the tournament.
Yeah.
But anyway, they picked 8, and I was fortunate that they had the inaugural British Mid-Amateur at Sunningdale on the new course at Sunningdale. And basically I won it, which Clive Brown then
That got you in.
That got me in. That for certain. Clive, people would have said, well, you'd have got in anyway. But the fact that I won the inaugural British Mid-Amateur, which was a big deal, because this was going to be the brand new tournament, for the future. So they were going to try and promote mid-amateur golf for teams and things like that. Anyway, I won it, and it gave me the Mike Ewer, who I played in the final, had a hole-in-one in the final. And I actually played the par threes in 4 under par.
No way, round the new.
I had 2 2s, a 1 and a 3 on the 17th. And I didn't need to do any more than just make the 3 on the 17th. And I can remember Mike saying, I think it must have been about 15 or something, 14 maybe. I made a hole in one on 14, and Mike, I remember him teeing up and says, "Oh well, this for a half then," which is a lovely expression.
That
got me into the team.
Timing of winning that event at that time when it had that much cachet as a new event that was sort of like we've got to,
and also the stuff that I'd done prior to that. I mean, I was playing for England on a successful and regular basis. The fact that I hadn't played in '93. It was irksome, to be honest, because I was still playing well enough. And there was a few English players that felt slightly aggrieved. They went for a very young team, thinking that this was the way of overcoming scar tissue, that we were going to have a young team that were going to be up and brash and ready to play the Americans and not be weighed down by the fact of having lost, etc., which was a big mistake because we actually had, I think we only got 5 points. Against the Americans in that particular Walker Cup.
In 93.
Yeah.
So
that then changed that whole ethos for starters. And they started to think, we need to get a more balanced team that's, competitive in match play. And it wasn't just about the stroke play aspect to it. But 95, we had a very good team full of great stars for the future. I mean, Stephen Gallagher, David Howell, Podrick Harrington. And, obviously the fact that I've been selected as one of the 2 others, didn't really affect my attitude as to how I was going to approach the tournament. Gary Harris, said his clubmate, from Broome Manor, David Howell had been selected in the 8, and he thought, well, if he's going to get in and I haven't been selected yet, I'm going to turn professional. So he phoned up the English Golf Union and said, I'm going to turn professional. And I remember Paul Baxter saying, no, you're going to get in the Walker Cup. Well, if they weren't prepared to pick me in the 8, why would I want to become an afterthought?
Why me?
So he turned professional, and it gave Jody Flanagan an opportunity from Ireland to join us in the team, and he did brilliantly well. Basically that was the pinnacle. That's what he wanted to achieve, and he was working at the time in probably one of the most successful funeral businesses in Dublin, and he basically not quite retired, but not far off. Playing amateur golf to concentrate on business once he'd reached this pinnacle of playing in the Walker Cup, and then obviously subsequently us winning it.
And people like Barclay Howard as well, who was like, west coast of Scotland, wasn't he?
Well,
he's a proper,
and a wonderful golfer.
Yeah, and there's stories. Was it true? And he had a massive Massive Open there, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he won the silver medal, and he had a book that they wrote, Out of the Rough, and there's a wonderful line in it. He said in 1995, was it 95? No, it was sort of in the early 90s. He said, I realised that I was an alcoholic. He said the only problem was that 2 years earlier, everyone else had already decided that was the case. I mean, wonderful. He was such a funny guy. Yes, he did have issues with drink.
Gritty players, that team.
Oh,
in 95.
Absolutely. Really. Gordon Sherry was part of the team as well. 6'8" and big shock of ginger hair, looked like a sort of a Highland cow. But he was great fun. Very, very funny boy. And incredibly talented, and I enjoyed his company very much. He was very, very bright, and we just had the most amazing experience from start to finish.
You bookended your Walker Cup career with, I mean, you've always been known as a bit of a giant killer. I think in that event, it's fair to say. Maybe talk to us about 95. I mean, Tigers playing that year. You know, spoiler alert.
3 years earlier, you've played with Jack, you've played with Arnie, and now you're playing.
And then I played with Gary Player and Tom Weiskopf in the Open. So these were, but I was never afraid of meeting people like that, because obviously I was fortunate enough in that period. I was talking to you about when I caddied for my father. I was meeting some of the luminaries of the game, even in those days. My dad was playing practice rounds with, well, all sorts of top players like Bernard Gallagher and the top players of their era. So I was never frightened of meeting celebrity players because they were just human beings like me. I treated everybody the same way. I always did, even when I was a kid. And I was able to converse with people sensibly. And they enjoyed my company as much as I enjoyed theirs. So I looked to be able to expand on that. I mean, you know, I had lunch with Nick Price and things like that at Augusta, and they said, "Would you like, come and have lunch with me?" And that was a nice thing for them to do. But again, you build up this persona, I suppose, of not being frightened about scenarios of being on the golf course in a pressurized situation in front of big crowds. It was something I relished. I actually really, really enjoyed it.
So you get the foursomes in the morning, and then the structure of the 2 days is foursome singles.
Yeah, foursome singles.
Foursome singles day two. And you got this draw. You were probably made aware in the morning of that draw for the afternoon.
No, well, we were told the Fridays when they announced the Saturday draw. Okay. So you've got foursomes in the morning, singles in the afternoon. I wasn't playing in the foursomes, which was incredibly frustrating because you're playing the singles not unready, but you're not knowing the golf course and the nuances of how it's playing that particular day, pin positions and that sort of thing. So I knew that I was playing bottom. So I was anchorman, which I'd done with England in the past, and so subsequently, I wasn't worried about that scenario. It was something that Clive Brown had talked to me about, and he said, "Look, we need somebody at the bottom that we feel as though we can rely on." And I can remember stood in. They had obviously the line of the American players, the line of the British players. And Gordon Sherry was stood next to me, and I've got this picture of him shaking my hand, which is slightly eclectic, but basically he turned to me when Tiger hadn't been announced, because I wasn't playing the foursomes, and when Tiger wasn't announced in the first three singles matches, Gordon turns to me and shakes my hand. He said, "You've got him,"
because he's either playing like 1, 2, or 10, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Or 8 in that.
I say he'd only done this, but he'd only just won like 3 US Ams at that point.
At that stage, he'd won 3 US Junior Championships in a row. He'd won 2 US Amateurs in a row, been part of the US Walker Cup Eisenhower Trophy team that had won it in Paris National, the Eisenhower, which is the world team stroke play. And he was a celebrity superstar, Pac-10 records.
Reputation was there. You knew he was going to be a world beater at that point.
Well,
Or people
I didn't realise until I played him how good he was going to be. But obviously, I've then drawn him. He'd done well in the foursomes in the morning, won his match. And so we had the crowds out on the golf course. Then we had quite a big crowd following us because a lot of people were fascinated in seeing this new celebrity superstar. And so anyway, we've met on the first tee, not a great deal of communication. And he's got an iron out. So I'm thinking, I'm going to lay up.
First at Porthcawl.
Not
a bad play.
It's 310, is it?
It's just a little bit over that. He can drive the green with an iron. It was downwind.
Oh, he's going for the green.
Oh,
right,
he's going
okay,
for the green with an iron.
Right, now we get it.
So I've hit 5-wood because I want to lay up in the bunkering zones. So I've hit 5-wood and a sort of a pitching wedge, full out pitching wedge onto the green. He can drive the green. And we halve the first. Next hole, he's blitzed the drive straight into the wind. He's hit a wonderful tee shot. And I've hit driver and I'm hitting 5-wood in. And I haven't got it 100%, but it's just front left, just off the edge of the green. So a good position where the flag was. He's at 8-iron. He flies the green. And it wasn't into the wind. He flies the green. Wind's sort of helping off the left. And he's obviously slightly pulled it. It's carried the green. Gone out of bounds.
So you've got it on second.
So all of a sudden I've gone one up.
Because the fence is only right at that
it's
back
right,
of that green.
Right there.
Yeah.
So we then halve the next hole, par 3. I win that one with the 3. And then we've got the par 5 up the hill. And I've hit driver. And Tiger's hit driver. He's 100 yards past me. He's got 8-iron into the green. I've hit 5-wood.
Glorious golf hole.
5-wood up the hill onto the front edge of the green. Decent. And I always made the point of walking in between my opponent and the green. So he was always looking at my back. So whenever we're walking up, he's always looking at my back. He's always behind me. It was my tactic. To a certain extent, although it did help that I was always playing my second shot first.
I was going to say part of your strategy. It's like Bobby Jones, wasn't it? He always said he always liked to play his approach shot first. So partly your game tactic with Tiger was make sure you don't
put pressure on
Tiger.
Your opponent and obviously have the psychology. Anyway, so we're walking up there, and Colin Edwards is my who's a Southwest player and a friend of mine. He's caddying for me, so. We're walking up and Tiger hits this shot and we're watching it and Colin's gone, that looks long to me. Anyway, there's a chap sat on the wall behind the green or by the green and he hits him absolutely square on the top of the head. He peels over backwards on the wall and he's gone out of bounds. So
the person or the ball?
everything's
the whole
gone
kit
out
and
of
caboodle's
bounds.
gone.
Now, it must have hurt. I don't care what anyone says, but anyway, we get up there and there's no ball, no person. It's just everything's disappeared. So Tiger's gone out of bounds, so I win that hole, so I'm now 3 up. He can drive the next par 4.
Yep.
Which I think he makes 3, so he went into the greenside bunker, splashes out, makes 3. He then hits it over the back of the par 3.
It's a
with a pitching wedge.
Gorgeous little par.
It's a really good par 3. But he screws it back up the hill from off the green.
Really?
I don't know how he's done that, but it disappeared and then it appears again.
Revs up over.
Up over the top. Don't ask me how he did that. I've no idea.
Were you watching in awe? Because it's easy in hindsight to look at him with everything he's achieved and be like, wow, that was amazing. But at the time...
I wasn't really paying it. No, I wasn't really. No, I'm just playing my game. So anyway, to cut a long story short, we get down to 14, back to all square, and he's hit his tee shot over the back of the green. I've played mine onto the green at to about 15 feet. Really good shot, actually. And he's dead. And he plays the most amazing pitch shot from behind the green. Goes out to probably about just outside of mine, but on a different line. And he holds it and does the full tiger.
Does he
this.
really? Gives it the full...
Oh, he gave it the full
Yeah.
like that, and the crowd are going bonkers and everything else. And anyway, well done. I make mine for a 2.
That's impressive. You've almost got to mentally, I suppose, in that moment, be prepared for him to box that from 16,
No,
17
not really.
feet.
I was just playing
and
my
just
own
be like,
game.
I'm
I was literally just playing my own game. I mean, yes, okay, it was... it could have been disconcerting listening to the crowds yahooing and him making a 3 from an impossible place. I mean, it was impossible.
It's filthy if you miss that green.
And, the fact that he could drive 4 of the par 4s and he could also hit every par 5 with no more than a 5-iron. You start to look at it and you go, this guy's special. Because there's nobody else. Over 2 shots, he was a minimum of a club longer than every other player. So in other words, he's hitting a club less into any green over 2 shots.
There's a apocryphal story of the 16th hole at Porthcawl with Tiger. And 16th hole's got the cross bunkers that are just...
It's
I can't reach.
It was 272 to carry. And the bunkers are, they've got a mound. They're set in the mound. And the mound is 15 feet at least high. At least 15 feet.
You'd never try and carry it, would you? Almost nobody.
No one, unless it's howling gale behind, no one really has a go. And I swear to you, in that particular match, he'd just won the previous hole with a par, which I slightly mucked up. I made 5. And I guarantee he necked the drive. But, I mean, I've hit 5 wood off the tee to sort of lay up into a good position. I've hit another 5 wood that's just off the edge of the green. He's hit 9-iron.
It's so hard to compete against this.
Which, it just goes through the back of the green. We both have to make really decent putts from 5 or 6 feet. That's obviously 16. So 17, we get onto the 17th, par 5, which is now the 18th. No, we're all square.
All square.
And again, driver 5 wood, recurring theme for almost the entire round. My 5 wood nearly got worn out. Tiger's hit, I think, he's hit something like 1-iron, 5-iron, something like that. He's gone through the back as well. I've chipped up to about 7 feet, miss it. And I'm thinking, oh, please. Anyway, he misses his and goes as far past again. All of a sudden, I'm thinking, hello, I could be going down the last one up here. Anyway, all credit to Tiger. Again, fantastic putting. Holds it, knocks it in. So he's hit 1-iron down what is the first for our Senior Open, but it's the 18th.
Amazing finishing hole.
It is an amazing finishing hole. And he's pulled it slightly, but he's just in the semi on the left. I've hit driver down the right. Again, recurring theme, 5 wood, just off the edge of the green on the right. The only bad rough on the entire golf course, and I mean serious bad rough, was right of that green. So you can't afford to miss it right. And he's got a ball slightly below his feet, and it's slightly, sort of wispy, curly, semi-rough. And he turns to his caddy, who he's barely spoken to the entire round, or day even, apparently. And his name's Mark Benker, and he's captain of the Oxford and Cambridge, sort of golf team.
Very good player.
Very good player.
And
interestingly, the American team had Oxford and Cambridge Golf Society caddies. So anyway, turns to Mark and he goes, "What do you think?" Well, of course, Mark hadn't even contemplated that he was going to be asked. But anyway, he said, "Well, what do you feel most comfortable with?" And he said, "Well, it's between a 7 and 8 iron." He said, "I'm probably going to hit 7. Just to make sure that I'm on the green." Because I just missed the green. And, he was thinking, well, I've got a chance to maybe win the hole here. Now, at that stage, we're 1 in front after the first session. So if I win, we go 2 points in front, which is a very nice cushion to go into the second day. If I lose, we're all square. And if I halve, we've still got that 1 point cushion. So it's really important how I finish. Anyway, Tiger decides to go with 7-iron, hits this shot, and again, we're walking forwards, and we get a very good perspective. And Collins turned to me and said, that's going left. That's going left. Now, we had 6,000 people round the hole.
Yeah, because everything's finished now.
Well,
isn't it?
everything's finished. So all the spectators are now round the 18th. And there's a small trench that's 6 to 8 inches wide left of the green. And there's people everywhere. But anyway, it's disappeared into the crowd. Now, all credit to Tiger, age 19. He waits at the golf ball where he's hit the shot from to get, a decision as to whether he's inbounds, out of bounds, or whatever. Anyway, it's signalled that it's out of bounds. So he's now got to play another one. My caddy's gone, he's gone out of bounds, he's gone out of bounds. Well, I said, look, hey, he can play another ball, knock it on the green, make 5, and I've still got to make an up and down to win the match, or I've still got to play my game. Anyway, all credit to him, knocks it to 15 feet.
Such.
I chip up to 2.5 feet. He misses. So fortunately, I didn't need mine. So I finish up winning 1 up. And I look at it and I go, well, everyone is just going crazy. My mum's there. I've got this fantastic picture of my mum in her white anorak, sort of at the green. And, I look back on that, and of course, it again enhanced my reputation. But the only thing I will say about that is I was in a no-lose situation. Yeah. He was the best amateur golfer in the world, won 2 US amateurs in a row, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I lose, well, I've lost the best player in the world.
Yeah, and you've taken him down 18. You've hardly...
I've not disgraced myself either way, but to win... Of course, now everyone's going, the Tiger Tamer and all this sort of thing. Now, somebody pointed out to me recently when I was doing a speech and I mentioned about this. He said, well, you lost the next day to him. People think you won, twice. No, I didn't. I've never said that. That's other people saying that. But there's a caveat to that story. Yes, I did lose 4 and 3 to him on the second day. But on the 12th hole, I'm only 1 down. So subsequently, we then hear the cheer. We've won the Walker Cup. So I turned to the referee and said, right, I'm quite happy to concede the match now. The referee's gone, oh no. He said, you can't concede. You have to play out to a finish. And wouldn't it be great if you beat Tiger Woods twice in a weekend? Tiger has stood right behind him.
He's coming at you now.
Goodness gracious.
Well, thanks for that. Really. Yeah. Is there any? You may as well have sort of sliced one of my arms off. I got no chance of beating him at that stage. He was annoyed to the extreme. And the story goes that he didn't realise that I conceded on one of the par 5s, the hole. I turned to the referee and said I concede that hole because I'd made par and he putted up to this. Anyway, because the referee then didn't announce the concession, because Tiger was lining his ball up, etc., etc., Tiger then went through the whole process of holing the putt. Now, I was halfway to the next tee. He thought I disrespected him.
Yeah.
And
really?
He said to Phil Rowe, because Phil got his scholarship to Stanford University, and the alumni weekend, they have Stanford against Notre Dame. And so anyway, the golf team are down on the pitch, and Tiger walks straight up. And the first thing he says is, oh, you're Phil Rowe. You played in the Walker Cup. And so subsequently, Phil says, oh, now Phil's from Carbis Bay in Cornwall. I mean, it's a big deal. He actually owned, he played golf with the guy that owns Safeway.
Right.
Let me tell you, billionaire. So again, Phil's just, he's a very bright lad. He's a very intelligent guy who can play golf, and a lovely, lovely lad. Anyway, so he goes, yeah, that's right, yeah. Flattered that Tiger would remember him. And so he said, a friend of mine, Gary Wolstenholme. Yeah, I've got bad memories about that guy. And walked off.
So there's never any real pleasantries or anything.
Oh, no.
And
the only interesting thing is that when I won
You'd have been very young then as well.
Well, he was absolutely.
In the ascendancy.
I was lucky enough that when I won the amateur the second time, I played at St George's in the Open. And Tiger's locker is always next to mine. I've got his locker badge from when he won the US Open at Torrey Pines.
Woods and Wolstenholme.
So his locker was next to mine, but he never used it. But he came into the locker room and I had to dash in. I'd left some golf balls or whatever in my locker, so I had to dash in, get the balls out of my locker and dash out because I was on the tee. And I could feel Tiger looking at me, but I didn't have time to sort of say hi or anything like that. And I wish that I had said, hello, how you doing? But I would like to meet him again one day. Apart from anything else, to clear up the issue with regards to that concession, which I'd made, and I expected the referee to mention it, and then, of course, it's always felt as though I disrespected him. I'd never disrespect any opponent, ever. I would never do that. But the interesting, aspect to that is that 18 months later, after that win, that I obviously took Tiger out and everyone's going, oh, he's the Tiger Tamer and all that sort of thing. He wins the US Masters by 12 shots, breaks the record for consecutive holes in regulation, as in, he's hit the green in regulation, 54 holes in regulation. He beat Hogan's record.
He hit 54 greens in reg?
In that year.
In a row, wasn't it?
And won by 12 shots.
I didn't know that.
It's a fantastic stat.
I've never heard that.
It was after that front nine, wasn't he? Because he had a disastrous front nine, and then he went turbo.
Yeah.
For the other, whatever it is, 63.
It's an incredible statistic. He shot 70 in that first round, having gone out in 40. I think it was 40.
I know. That's that famous Monty quote, isn't it? It's like we had him in our sights, and then from that point onwards,
we lost. Yeah, exactly.
But
Monty's always come up with quite a few key quotes that have always been good to sort of look at. But the best one ever was Sandy Lau was asked, "What do you think of Tiger Woods?" And Sandy, God bless him, said, "Have never played it." Which is wonderful. But the fact that Tiger then went on to do what he did, it added to my reputation as well.
Is
regardless.
That like you've had a truly amazing career? Would you say that was the standout moment in the career, or does your mind take you somewhere else?
No, definitely. Great Britain and Ireland won the Eisenhower Trophy out in Chile, of all places, Santiago, and that to me is the great pinnacle of my career.
Really?
I shot 67 in the final round, which was the best score bar one of anybody in the field. And we finished up winning by, I think, two shots. Luke Donald and myself, our scores counted for all 4 days. And then Paddy Gribbin and, oh God, I knew I was going to forget the name. Lorne Kelly was the other player. And they dovetailed fantastically. They'd have like a level par and then an 80, and then a level par and an 80, and the other did the opposite, which was fantastic. So we won the World Team Championships in a most amazing place. Amazing.
And you're all
place.
away together.
And we very nearly didn't
world.
go because General Pinochet, who was the president of Chile, had been arrested was arrested in London. Literally a few months beforehand, and the ladies didn't go.
Because
the ladies didn't go.
Like, this is a bit of a dangerous.
Well, they said they could they could detain you or they could do whatever. Anyway, fortunately, we did go. But I've got some amazing memories, and I've got a wonderful picture of myself, Sergio Garcia, Henrik Stenson and Peter Hansen having cocktails after the closing ceremony.
Absolutely amazing.
Which is a fantastic picture to have, because I knew Serge really, really well. I knew them all really, really well because we competed on, obviously St Andrews trophies and other tournaments, to remember those. I mean, I've watched Serge play some insane shots over the years. He had one of the best short games, real Spanish hands. And then, obviously as a pro, he sort of slightly lost it, but, he lost his direction because he should have been as successful as Tiger.
But do you look at, when you look at all your experiences as an amateur, those team moments, have they been sort of more enjoyable, more satisfying?
Yeah, I think
because you're
so.
away together and there's that sort of camaraderie. I sense that, playing the amateur circuit, and for as long as you have done, turning up and playing in amateurs and their match play marathons is probably quite an isolating experience because it's still, it's sole contributor stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think you sort of celebrate a bit more. Every time I've won an amateur, I've never celebrated, ever.
Yeah. Because not
every amateur event I've won, I've never celebrated.
It's very stoic,
it was just to go back to the hotel or where you're staying or digs or whatever. It was just the next day. I mean, the one funny thing about my situation was, having won that Walker Cup, we then played the home internationals at Hoylake, and the Scots players that were in that Walker Cup team didn't really want to play the home internationals because they were on a downer. And I'm going, what do you mean? You've got a chance to play for your country. I couldn't grasp that at all. And, I won the amateur, obviously at Troon, drove home, then drove back up to Scotland to play the Scottish stroke play at Turnberry. And I won that over 4 rounds. And again, people going, how do you do that? What do you mean? How do I do that? This is my next tournament. It's my
vacation.
It's what I wanted to do. It was. I couldn't understand why people wouldn't want to sort of ride the crest of success, and so in some respects, it's probably why I was able to survive for as long as I did. I played for England for 20 years. No one's done that before.
But there'll never be another Gary Wolstenholme because there'll never be someone that will. I don't know. Maybe it's unfair to say, but a lot of top players, the amateur game is the stepping stone before they they try and get some accomplishments before they become a pro. And you've turned professional much later in life, but you must have wrestled with that decision quite a number of times. Like, just let us dig into your psyche with, making that decision. And there must have been points where you thought, I'm good enough to go and make a living doing this.
Yeah. By the time I got to be perhaps good enough, it would be 32. Too late. Ricky Willison, who I knew very well as an amateur, he turned pro at 30. My father had turned pro at 30, but it was a different era. Ricky turned pro at 30. Very, very talented player. Very talented. Without being super long or necessarily doing anything massively better than everyone else, he had the full package. He had it all. But he didn't enjoy travelling. But at 30, it's quite hard. You've basically got to give yourself a couple of years to bed yourself in. Once you're in, then it's your 10-year earning span, and then you can make your mind up whether you retire, keep going, whatever you want to do. By the time I was sort of probably good enough, I never had any money, so because I was spending it all on golf, and even with the help that the English Golf Union gave me, it was still a matter of every available pound I spent on my tournaments and getting to tournaments or getting equipment and things like this. So I never had any money, so I couldn't afford to turn professional. If I'd been the homegrown boy come good, which I'd said I never was, I was always beating the homegrown boy come good. And so, it never presented itself. Plus, in the back of my mind, it was still my father saying, I don't really want you to turn professional. It's a brutally hard profession to make a living. learn to do something else. And of course, I was working as a marketing manager for Kilworth Springs Golf Club in Leicestershire, and I was travelling the world at somebody else's expense. Doing exceptionally well, getting half-page interviews and information in the Daily Telegraph, which at the time was the big sports paper. I was doing some amazing things. Turning professional wasn't a necessity, and then obviously in 2008 I was phoned up by the chairman of selectors for England, and basically told that they were going to concentrate on the under 25s, even though that home internationals that year England finished last, and basically the report read lack of experience. And I sort of thought to myself, well, you've just shot yourself in the foot. Why wouldn't you have, your most decorated player still contributing to England? And it was a situation of, well, I wasn't going to be involved with the RNA. We discussed this. And England didn't want me to play anymore. What was I going to do? And my coach at the time said, well, you've got to turn professional. Don't be ridiculous. You're getting towards 50. I was 48 at the time. Why wouldn't you? So I turned professional. I turned professional, had a go at the tour school, missed out by a shot in qualifying. And so I'd spent $5,000 doing that, which was virtually my entire sort of savings at the time. So I moved back home from Leicester. The job had changed at Kilworth Springs, and I was just thinking, well, if I am going to turn pro, I may as well move back home. So that's what I did. I moved back in. My mum got rid of me at 19 and got me back at 47. We always have a laugh about it. But I then hadn't got a clue what I was doing. I played Europro, and I played 7 events, but I wasn't told that you have to play 8 for your tournaments to count for the Order of Merit. So I've then had to go back to the tour school again the following year. And the good thing about that was that I got my card back, and then I won a Europro event at Stoke-by-Nayland and picked up $10,000, which, wow.
First paycheck you've ever had in the game.
No, I'd had others, but not to that extent.
But yeah, you know what I mean? Like
that was a decent amount of money.
Earning money for anything, and then you're like, whoa, okay.
So I then had this opportunity to go on the seniors, and we were told by Andy Stubbs, who was the CEO of the European Senior Tour, that I was only allowed 1 invite, which I know actually is patently not true, but that's what we were told. So we got an invite for me in the first event available to me after I got to 50, which was the Travis Perkins at Woburn. And I got an invite to play, and I turned up and obviously prepared properly. But I was playing well because obviously I just won a Europro event, and I shot it with good scores as well. I think I shot 62 in the second round, which obviously set me up nicely. And then, I won by 4 shots, I think. So anyway, I then played at Woburn. Course suits me obviously pretty well. Finished tied 3rd. Automatically, that gets me the next tournament, which was 2 weeks later in the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
Big money event as well. So anyway, I get some interviews, and I'm saying, well, the course doesn't really suit me. It's quite long and everything else. But I probably played some of the best golf that I could possibly play. I putted brilliantly as well. And I beat Gordon Brand Jr. down the stretch to win the tournament. And obviously, having won my second tournament, they couldn't get rid of me for 2 years.
Yes.
So we had a bit of a laugh about that because they desperately didn't want me to be on tour.
Do you think there's you mentioned there about England Golf saying we're going to focus on the under 25s. Yeah. We touched on the British Mid-Amateur, which is an event that no longer happens. the mid-amateur scene is really, really buoyant in America. There's more people, sure, but do you think it's overlooked in the UK?
Personally, I do, yes. I think that there is a place for mid-amateur golf in the teams, but it depends on what you're doing the teams for. Are you doing it to represent your country as an opportunity to win the tournament, or are you doing it to create professionals of the future? And I feel that France were the first ones to set this up. Actually, Sweden were as well. That basically it was to develop professionals for the future. So, Ryder Cup players, etc., for the future. That's what their whole amateur ethos was about. Now, France was a historical golfing country like Britain. So England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales and France were all very, very similar. Golf is a huge sport in France with the amateur side. And they had some older players playing at the time. Certainly when I started in 88, they had some older players. They had some young players as well, but they had a lot of older players that were exceptional. Francois Luz was one, and Francois Luz was probably the best of the older players at that time in Europe. Never mind in France.
Yeah.
But it then changed, and I can remember, the Swedish idea of Team Sweden. So they get them through to being good enough to turn professional, and then they support them for the first few years of their professional career, but they have to then give money back to the national union to help fund the next crop. And it was it then started the whole professionalism, if you like, of amateur golf going forwards. I mean, when I first started, Ian Erskine was running the English Golf Union, which was for the whole of England, from the back of his house.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And then we went a lot more professional from the point of view, we had an office in Leicester. Keith Wright was the secretary of the English Golf Union, supported by Paul Baxter. And then we moved to Woodall Spa, and Neil Hodgkin, who owned Woodall Spa, sold Woodall Spa to the English Golf Union for something like $1.5 million. Basically gave it to them.
It's nothing.
No. And they built a second golf course, which wasn't as good as it should have been.
Yeah,
because it could have been a stadium course and a venue for major tournaments and everything, but it wasn't. It wasn't. It was sort of played at. I think they very nearly bankrupted themselves with that and the head office, which Scotland did. I mean, Drummoy nearly bankrupted the Scottish Golf Union. So England were lucky. They survived, but they very nearly bankrupted themselves.
When you reflect on, I mean, I suppose we can't let this moment pass without, you've beaten Tiger in a Walker Cup. You've also taken down some other big names. This is kind of two things I want to touch on is, first of all, Anthony Kim. I mean, you played Anthony Kim in one of your Walker Cups, did you?
Yes, that's right, in Chicago Golf Club. It was the last Walker Cup I played.
Walker Cup. And
yeah.
I mean, it's amazing how the arc of Anthony Kim was coming up, and he's probably the next Tiger. And
I think undoubtedly, and the fact that he had an Asian background was a big deal as well. Potential sponsors were looking at that very, very positively. He was a wonderful golfer, very freewheeling, massively talented. And as you say, I think people saw him as the next big name in the game, to somebody to rival Tiger. And, he was probably the best of the American team that year.
And they had a good team that year.
JB Holmes was in the team as well.
Matt Every was there.
Matt Every as well. There was some fantastic golfers. The Americans always produce some great, great players. And they always seem to throw in at least one, maybe even two older players, which I still feel is something that GB and I should be looking at. But anyway, as you say, with the defunct British mid-amateur, and the other problem is that it's very hard for older players to get into the big tournaments to be able to then qualify for the Walker
There's
Cup.
not many Stuart Haggerstads over in the UK.
No.
You know,
Well,
whereas
it's
there's
almost
quite a few
impossible
of
to get the
them,
Wagger
and,
rankings, isn't it? Because
Well,
it's all
that's the problem.
collegiate.
I mean,
Nowadays,
Matt McLean's a complete exception, you know, because he's playing, you know, he's playing a full amateur schedule, but he's, you know, a bit older and he's, you know, highly talented and highly competitive, and, you know, put in a great showing in the last one.
Yeah.
But
how close was he to being selected? Probably not at all. And that to me is very sad because there's somebody that has a lot of experience. You see, when I first played for England, I was, you know, 27. So subsequently, I'd already formulated me as an individual. The psychologists were working with these younger guys, you know, 16 to 25, say, and, you know, they hadn't quite formulated themselves as individuals. They hadn't really got the experience. They hadn't been able to cope with some of the pressure that's involved with, you know, top quality golf before turning professional and all the pressures that takes on. And I remember Brian Hemmings being the the sports psychologist for the English golf year. Lovely guy. And he said to me after one of the sessions, he said, "Gary, why is it that I feel that I've learned something about how to do what I'm doing, and I don't feel as though I've hugely helped you? And why is it that we always finish up talking about other people and not you?" And I said, well, you know, to be honest, that's the way our conversations go. And secondly, I already know what I need to know as far as me as an individual. I play my game. It's not going to change. And some of the others were under immense pressure to try and get into teams. I've seen people in tears.
You're just very comfortable in your own skin as a golfer of what you're going to do with the golf ball.
Yeah,
and
at
you've
that
just
time,
doubled
definitely.
down on what you're going to. So when you come up against an Anthony Kim or whatever, it's like, okay, but I'm just going to keep doing what I know works.
Yeah, I've done this before.
And then,
Well, we did an interesting thing. We played France at Walton Heath in Canton International, and Malcolm Lewis, who's the captain, wanted to do a test of heart rate. And my heart rate on the first tee prior to teeing off was under 80. He said,
It's barely getting out of bed. The stuff.
mine's like 300 on a chip.
You know,
on the practice
it
stuff.
was it wasn't anywhere near 80. It was about 73. And he said, "You've got the slowest heart rate, considering you're on the first tee, about to compete for England against France, and everyone else, minimum's 80 to 100. Standing on the first tee, adrenaline pumping and everything else."
Just a cool cat.
He said, "You're a freak. You're a freak," which was a compliment. I took it as a compliment. I didn't care. But he said that's just something that doesn't happen. I was just, as you say, comfortable in my own skin. The most nervous I've ever been was the Augusta, the first time when I played. I played in a memorial with even more people stood around. And didn't obviously shower myself in glory, unfortunately, because that's Augusta with rough, that place.
Really?
But still one of the best golf courses you'll ever play anywhere. People ask me, you know, what's the best golf course you've ever played? Well, it's very difficult. Eastlake in Atlanta was one of the best golf courses I've ever played.
Milkshakes at Muirfield Village.
Because the benefit with that is that you've got to play left to right, right to left. You've got to be long. You've got to have great short game skills. It's just a complete golf course. You know, undulations, elevation changes, a few blind shots. It's just got everything, and you've got to be a great player to win round there, which has been proven with the Tour Championships, of course.
When you reflect upon your Walker Cups and the Walker Cup as it is now, from an outsider's perspective, it feels to many that perhaps these amateurs are kind of they're professional in all but name. Do you feel like the Walker Cup has changed since your time to now?
Well, yes, because the players are younger. I mean, I was fortunate enough to be asked to do the commentary for the Walker Cup match at St Andrews, which was really interesting. And I went out and watched them practice, and they are professionals. They hit it so far, so well. Almost a complete player, to the extent where they could go out to a tour event and not disgrace themselves, and perhaps even maybe challenge to win.
Well, Dunlap was in the St Andrews Walker Cup team.
Yeah.
And he won as an amateur the year later, didn't he?
Right. So, but the only thing I will say is that sometimes shot selection under pressure showed that there's that element of inexperience, which an older player, I think, would probably. I mean, a good example: pins back left, second day, and we got a chance to win the Walker Cup basically. And I can remember one player missing the green to the left.
Which hole?
On 17.
Right.
And so he's pin high left, and he's tried to chip it with a lob wedge.
Mm.
And I've just openly said that this can't be the percentage shot under the circumstances that, you know, you're in front playing the last, and you need to win your match for them to have any chance of winning the Walker Cup. Of course, doesn't get it right, comes up short, takes 5, loses that, and then only halves the last. You know, okay in 3, but that's too late by that stage. And I looked at it and I just thought that's inexperience. Now, this is where Stuart Wilson was a wonderful captain and has been for 4 years. He's sacrificed a lot to be Walker Cup captain, etc., etc. But, you know, he was saying to players, you need to think a bit more outside of the box sometimes, you know, with regards how you cope with certain shots under pressure. But at the end of the day, you only learn from experience. And I suppose this young lad probably, on reflection, would have changed his shot choice. But we lost that Walker Cup where we should have won it. Mm-hmm. So we literally snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory.
Because which ones you had? Porthcawl was your first. Then is it Quaker Ridge?
Well, Quaker Ridge was my next one, yeah. And
Nairn.
Sea Island.
Well, we had Sea Island. That's right.
Then Ganton. And then Chicago.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Some rubbish golf courses.
And it's all that goes with that week.
Yeah.
You go and play the Olympic Club. Which has got probably the biggest clubhouse and locker room I've ever seen anywhere in the world.
For an addict, it's the perfect diet, isn't it?
You are an addict.
You know,
I'm an obsessive compulsive. I just love golf.
And if you hadn't won the amateur here, 91 or whatever,
I might have disappeared.
Hadn't have gone on to, but you'd have still been addicted to the sport. I sense.
I think almost certainly would have been, but I would have been an amateur for life, and I would. Yeah, probably got 6 kids and been a stacker at Morrison's. I've no idea, but I mean, I don't know how things will work out in the future. Still, even now, I'm not in. You know, although I'm 64 and 65 next, I'm not looking at retiring per se. I would get bored. So. Yeah, what I will do in the future, I have no idea. I'd like to be able to put something back into the game. I'd love to do coaching. I'd love to do all sorts of things to help other golfers enjoy their golf that much more. And, you know, it's something I think I'll be very good at. But you just don't know what life has in store for you. I mean, I have no idea what I'm going to do in the future. No idea whatsoever. But I have dreams and plans, but whether they'll come to anything, I have no idea.
You also do, I think we should know, you also do some fantastic after dinner speaking, because we had dinner last night, and after dinner you were a barrel and a half, so it was we had quite an amusing evening.
I'm not a joke teller, but the fact is that the stories are relevant to anybody who's a golfing aficionado, because it adds to their understanding of the game. So you're adding a dimension to, you know, what they already know. But, you know, I enjoy talking about what I've done because you know, I'm obviously pretty proud of what I've achieved. I mean, in particular, the fact that I was you know, obviously got an MBE from the Queen herself at Buckingham Palace. That's undoubtedly one of the rewards that I've had. To say, well, you've sacrificed a lot.
Over 200 international caps.
Well, 218, that's right. And then Peter McAvoy was the next most capped at 153. And then Sir
I can't believe there's that many matches.
And Sir Michael Bernalik was only 131, but he's the third most capped player.
I mean, the records are absolutely extraordinary.
What I would say,
I hope we get to play again and get to do another day.
We will.
I would like to add, I mean, you've played 6 Walker Cups, Eisenhower Trophies, Amateur Championships, the Masters twice, the Open twice, the US Open. Have you ever felt pressure like participating in a spotlight for cookie jar around Ganton? That must have equated to some of those big
being filmed out on the course.
You see, the funny thing, you may well joke, but there is an element of pressure. I was frustrated that I didn't play better on a particularly hard golf course on a very tricky day, which, I'm not great in the cold, so I'd like to play in slightly warmer conditions than we've had today. But with the camera there, I know I don't want to make a fool of myself.
Yeah.
And it's easily done on a hard golf course like this. And I'm not entirely on top of my game from the point of view I haven't played a huge amount through the winter. But, I will work on my game, hopefully play a lot more golf now that we get the lighter nights, and be able to go out. A local course to me where I live now is Heysham Golf Club, so I'll probably go out there and play a few holes in the evening. Kerris Green, where I'm sort of attached, is in superlative condition. I mean, it's supremely good. So for me to be able to go out and play 9 holes even, and get to play there a lot more will be very good for my game. I need to play more. Yeah. It's all right me hitting balls in the net or going on the range and hitting balls, but it's not the same as actually competing. And my sort of first sort of local sort of mini tour event, I didn't perform particularly well because there was the unpredictability of hard bounce and greens that were slightly inconsistent in pace. So that didn't suit my particular game. I should have done better. Yes, I know I should, but I didn't. Yeah. And, I don't really want to go out and compete and lose money. Yeah. So it will drive me to work hopefully that little bit harder to be able to then do better. But I realise that I'm getting to a stage now where focus and concentration, physicality is not as good as it should be. And so you've got to use those little incremental improvements, whether it's biorhythms, vitamins and minerals, food and beverage, anything that's going to give me a slight edge going forwards. It might be that, I've got my irons now as they are, but, I might be better off getting some newer irons because they might help me do that little bit better. So, actually it's my fairway woods that I'm not feeling as though I'm entirely on top of.
Now that's technique seem to work okay.
Well, yes, okay.
Had a burn mark on it, yeah.
16 or 17, yeah.
17,
but, at the end of the day, I need to know that I'm going to compete effectively, so I'll be driven that much harder to hopefully do that much better going forwards. I mean, I still love competing. I love it. The fact that the Legends Tour now has been lost really to me, to be able to go out and play on a reasonably regular basis hurts. But because of the stress, we talk about sporting stress and coping with adversity mentally. I now appreciate where people are coming from because, for the last 3 years, I've never been so stressed out about life in general, which then, unfortunately, seeps into the golf that I play. So off-course stuff can affect your on-course performance. And I always did appreciate it, but I now appreciate it from a personal perspective that it's affected my situation. To the extent where I've now lost my genuine opportunity to continue my career on the Legends Tour. But,
losing that ability to compete sorry to jump in, but losing that ability to start and tee it up must be really hard. Having
it's
done
hard
it
for me
so long, for over 30 years, and of playing
Yeah.
and just never having to worry about that, because you're always just in the field and having to start, and it's like, oh, I'm playing Tiger, or oh, I'm down at the amateur, or off of the Eisenhower, and then we're thinking, I just want to get a start and I just want to go out and go toe to toe again. That bit must hurt.
And
hurt a bit.
and the hard thing is that for the young amateurs that decide to turn professional at whatever age, whether it's 20, 16, 25, whatever, they go from that luxury of being in every team and big tournament to all of a sudden, well, how do I get in? Am I going to get some invites? I apply to the invites, and you can get maybe 5, 6, 7 starts on the DP World Tour, and then you've basically got to perform. If you don't perform, then it's going back to tour school. It's going on Challenge Tour, and it's incredibly, incredibly hard to break out of that, because there has to be a large element of good fortune for a ball to bounce at the right time. I mean, you get two balls that will bounce within 6 inches of each other, and they completely do something different. One will kick into the bunker, one will go on the green. One will be a scenario where all of a sudden you make birdie to get your card, or you win a tournament. Winning a tournament is immense for these young guys, and you need luck. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. Rory did brilliantly well at the Masters, obviously, with a huge amount of pressure, but there were some healthy chunks of good fortune.
Yeah, you can't do it without luck on your side.
And
can you?
I do totally agree with that. But this is something that when a young player comes out, having played for England for, let's say, 3 or 4 years, maybe played for junior for England as well, they then turn professional. All of a sudden, they're in a big pond and they're just a small fish. Unless they're lucky enough to get that break that allows them to then go on to play regularly. And you see 1 or 2 guys that make it, but you see also a hatful that haven't got a chance in hell of getting a start. Then they're in the also-rans of playing Challenge Tour or worse, and they might never, ever see the light of day again, because you can only lose money for so long. Your parents can only subsidise, or your sponsors will only be prepared to help you for, say, 3 years. If you don't make it in that 3 years, you may as well pack it in and start something else.
I kind of get the impression that professional golf, below the stuff you see on TV day in, day out, is an incredibly taxing, difficult thing to do.
It's brutal.
Now, when you look back and reflect on the words that your father told you, do you look at that now through maybe a slightly different lens and think,
no, because I think I did always
from.
appreciate it, because I saw him struggle, and he was a wonderful, wonderful golfer. So I saw him struggle, and he had to find alternative ways of making a living. He used to work as a course designer, redesigner for Thompson, Perrett and Woolveridge out in Australia in the Far East. I mean, he got malaria on one job. He had a 300cc motorbike. That was to get him up to the site. He had a Russian steamroller, which was converted into a bulldozer. He had 300 tons of TNT and 650 manual workers and lorries moving earth away. And that was what he was doing. He was given the shitty jobs to a certain extent, but he wasn't able to make a genuinely great living doing that. Golf is much bigger now. And my father then started doing coaching and started to show an aptitude for that side of it. And I think that he then at 50 started to find the secret. And the tragedy of it all is that, having qualified for the inaugural Champions Tour in America, he won a tournament playing with Bob Hope. It was a Pro-Am tournament with Bob Hope. And he was going to get to play, and he was going to base himself in Charlotte in North Carolina. He was going to do coaching there and then play on the Champions Tour. And that year that he decided, he'd just sold his house in Melbourne, going to move over, diagnosed with cancer. And within 2 years, he's dead. and he's got 2 young sons, 7 and 5, and that's just supremely unlucky. The fact that life had given him a new direction potentially, and then it's just gone. And it shows you how fragile life is, and you've got to try and make every opportunity count, which is why you can't just be like John Daly and rely on pure talent. You've got to work hard at it. The golfing gods will give you whatever you put back in. I've always said that golf is a jealous mistress.
Expand
if
on
you
that.
do not give her 100% focus and concentration, she will give you nothing. And I feel that the other line that I love to express is that you've got to lose the fear of failure, yet still have an overriding desire to want to win. And it's a very fine line. You can't want it too much, but you can't be too blasé about it. Otherwise, you won't achieve it. And the majority of people will never achieve what Rory's done. He's just supremely talented, but he works hard. He is dedicated to the cause. I look at some players and I wonder what their dedication really was all about, because they loved the life of being a successful millionaire golfer, and then they lose it all because they lose the understanding that they have to work incredibly hard all the time. Tiger never let up.
No, they're just monk-like discipline around every
It almost
aspect.
has to be. Yet there has to be almost a balance of you can't just be a monk. You've got to be able to have some enjoyment out of it, or else why do you do it?
It's a maddening game.
Oh, it is. You've got to have very understanding people around you who are prepared to support you in what your endeavours are, and understand that actually there has to be a sacrifice and dedication required, which might mean that some of the people around you have to suffer you not being there all the time. And, I find it hard to leave my mum in a care home at the moment, knowing what it must be like for her to have to put up with care home life, having gone from being able-bodied to disabled in literally a split second. So I look at the youngsters today, and you have to understand it does not stop with you getting your tour card. You have then got to go on, and you've got to work hard, and you've got to try and get a team around you that will help you achieve whatever you need to achieve. And it is brutally hard sport, but God, it's rewarding. What I've done in, as you say, in the last 35 years has been an incredible ride. Incredible ride. The things that I've done, the places I've been to, the fact that I got an MBE from the Queen herself at Buckingham Palace. I've met George Bush, the US president, senior, at Sea Island during that Walker Cup.
Who is the grandson of
George Herbert Walker.
Herbert Walker, the founder.
Yeah,
because that was the first ever Walker Cup that went to.
And he loved golf. He loved golf, but
watch me hit this drive.
Yeah,
watch me hit this drive.
But these are people that I would have never ever met in a normal life. You might. I've been to number 10, and I've been to a garden party at number 10, and I met Tony Blair, and I was very impressed with him as an individual. Whether his politics were all entirely as perfect as we'd like to think that they maybe were, but at the end of the day, he was a very impressive individual. He was Prime Minister for 3 terms, fantastic achievement. I've just been very, very fortunate. Some of the actors and celebrities and just people that have worked incredibly tirelessly all their lives doing good deeds for other people, charities and things like that. I've been incredibly privileged. So I mean, when I was told at age 16 that forget about golf, it's never going to get you anywhere, you've, like Rory said, you've got to live your dream. You've got to actually go out and believe that you can achieve something in life through pursuing what you love doing, whether it's art or music or sport. But give it a chance. Don't just give up on it because it's the easy thing to do. Sometimes the hard things are the most rewarding. I believe, anyway.
I mean, and for all your sins, everything you've done for the game, you've had to put up with Sam and my ball striking today.
Do you know what? Actually, you laugh, but your ball striking is fine. It's just actually just getting the nuance of getting it round the goal.
Looking at Tom. Looking at Tom, not Sam. Gary, you've given us way more time. We spent yesterday evening with you. We had some drinks in the Dormy House here at Ganton. First of all, we got to say another huge thank you for Ganton for not only having us at their wonderful golf course today with Gary, who's got so many good memories here, but letting us do this podcast in their wonderful clubhouse. A huge thank you to you, Gary. It's been such a thrill to meet you, to play with you today. You are one of just the most inspiring characters I've ever had the pleasure to meet. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
My pleasure. Yep.
And, fingers crossed, one day we can tee it up and do round 2 of podcast. Well, it'll be round 3, I would have thought.
Gary's going to come to the last, and I think we're going to talk him into that one.
Gary, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure. I've really enjoyed meeting you guys too.
Watch this.